a playlist original.
Excuse me, ma'am. You wouldn't happen to have seen anyone resembling this man, would you?
This is, David. Anna, this is David.
Very nice to meet you.
David is a friend of your brother's. You know Caleb?
Yes, ma'am. One of the things he asked was for me to check on you and your whole family here. I want you to show me who hit you yesterday. What are you gonna do? Nothing bad. For the damages.
David, do you want to party?
Sure, that sounds nice.
I called the army base that David's from. They told me he doesn't exist. David, I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here.
Mrs. Peterson, it's no problem.
Thank you, David.
Who are you?
I'm a friend of the family.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives, where we talk about the movies you love or some of the ones that you may have forgotten about. Usually, with the Deep Dive spinoff, we have guests that have picked the movies in advance, and those are the movies that we're going to discuss. But this time, for this particular movie, I kind of wanted to, well, not even kind of, I really wanted to talk about it, and I kind of put a story out to see if anyone would be interested in covering it. And thankfully, a friend sent me in the direction of the person I am talking with now. And very excited to discuss the movie The Guest with Paul of, how do we say this? The review podcast. Did I get it right?
You did.
All right, nice. And, it was, we were talking about this off camera a bit, how this kind of came together, because I really wanted to talk about the movie, and David's really good at either helping me, like if I put something out there and he's like, I'm not familiar with this, but I know someone that's familiar with it, he will link me up with people that do you want to talk about this kind of stuff. And he's actually sent a lot of guests our way before, so I really appreciate him for doing that. I've known him since middle school, so he kind of knows what the vibe will be and like what the conversation will be with me, and usually can link me up with good people. So that's how it came together. And once I started talking to Paul about it, it was very clear that this will probably be a very fun chat, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for being on. And also, just to get started, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your podcast is about, whatever you want to promote. This is your time to do it.
Gaius, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. So glad that you mentioned David, who put us together, as very shortly on the review podcast, we are an episode about this here. And we're going to talk a lot about the Illuminati, the greater powers or whatever that are constantly represented in this movie
Yeah.
ad nauseum. But as I mentioned, I host a podcast called The Review. Basic premise of that podcast, we do the deep dive all the time. We have the guest bring the movie, so I don't have to pick or have any onus on it. It makes it so much easier that way. Guest brings a movie that's 7 years old or older. It's not part of any major franchise, so don't bring like Nightmare 5 or some random Marvel movie or whatever. No. And it's got to be 2 hours and 22 minutes or less, and you got to go pretty hard in the paint on that movie, either that you love or hate it. We've had some movies that surprised us that we were swayed about, some movies that delighted us. For instance, David brought a movie called Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks that I had never seen or only seen pieces of, and like, what a joy, what a gift that was, as this is. And I'm also an actor, writer. I'm SAG, Union Strong. Just want to mention that. super cool to be doing podcasting and guesting on podcasts, but that's I guess where my expertise lies. But like, I mean, like jack of many trades, master of none.
Yeah, I think we kind of have that in common because in addition to doing the podcast and stuff, I I do entertainment journalism, so I cover a lot of film and TV news for various like websites and stuff, and also a manager at a restaurant. So also very busy with a lot of different things all the time. So I'm
Slash.
yeah. I lead with the first one, and because the restaurant one is like I gotta get out of the house sometimes. I work from home mostly,
Yeah.
so it's a nice little break from to just be around people. But yeah, I find myself to be like very, very busy all the time. And then the podcasting thing, we're almost at the main show, we're almost at 200 episodes, and I never thought I'd be doing this at all. Like I never really listened to them before I was approached to do it, and it's been like great joy because like honestly, the co-host has been on the show for a year and a half of the main show. He lives all the way in Canada. We have actually haven't met in person, but we've been able to maintain this kind of fun like working relationship with him all the way over there and me in LA. And I've also been able to meet like all the guests who've been on the show multiple times. Really cool people. Just never met them in person, so it's created this kind of like unique kind of almost like family kind of thing, I guess, with a bunch of people I probably wouldn't have come in contact with otherwise. But it's really cool. It's really fun. So I like doing stuff like this and meeting new people like this. Has been probably the best part about doing it.
It's like I'm forgetting the name of the character. Brendan's the name of the actor, the son. I have lots of friends online.
Online, yeah.
I'm the same. Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. If there wasn't already enough reasons to empathize with this kid, Luke.
Yeah. I fully understand that. So I mean, it's cool, and like I said, it's always fun to connect on, especially movies that you happen to love that someone else loves. And like you said, especially when I've been lucky enough to introduce the guests to a lot of my friends who had never heard of it, who are also in I was in a similar boat before I saw it, where it kind of I assumed I was going to be watching something that felt very direct to video esque, I guess, when I saw the cover and all that stuff. I was like, all right, it'll be like a fun little diversion for the night, and I was going to leave it at that. And then I was just pleasantly surprised by how well executed it was, and a lot smarter than it had any right to be, and how it was able to like successfully blend even different types of genres within its runtime too. Like I completely was blown away by it. So that's why I try to suggest it to friends, and they have the same reaction at first when I try to tell them about it, try to like explain the plot, and they're like, oh, that doesn't same thoughts I had. That sounds very like direct to video ish. I'm like, all right, just check it out, just watch it. And they come out of it feeling like they're like, dude, I can't believe I hadn't seen that before. It was great. So I love sharing with people, but I do find that still a lot of people haven't seen it. I'm still surprised by that. Even like it's been 10 years since it came out, and it still feels like it's a hidden gem, I bet.
Yeah, you hit a lot of good notes on that too. It's a movie that I try to be really careful with in terms of whom I suggest it to. You had mentioned suggesting it to a lot of people. It's like, I don't know. I love David Cronenberg, but I don't suggest Videodrome to everybody I meet.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about this. It's so insanely polarizing. And for me, I thought kind of direct to video or what have you as well, because I had no idea this movie existed. I had no idea who any of these actors were or anything. I had seen You're Next, the director's previous entry, Adam Wingard's previous film, and was like, oh yeah, that was pretty fun. I liked that. My buddy was like, get ready for a ride. I went in completely cold.
Yeah.
And I am somebody who gets hit like boom, 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 boom by like train cars like coming straight at me when I watch stuff when it gets referential or starts to homage other things, especially things that I feel polarized about. And holy smokes, this movie, like I said, I saw this movie very, very cold. I'm very selective about whom I talk about it with. And when you listen to the review podcast, this deep dive on Back to the Blockbuster, you're gonna love all of it. So much guest. But the theater experience was something I felt like I had to have.
Yeah.
And I went to the Eagle Theater at Vidiot's in Eagle Rock there in LA and saw it with a crowd. And man, it was so great to feel gratified by so many other people laughing.
Yep.
That like that seemed to get that this movie is uncomfortably really, really, really funny.
Yeah. Agreed. I agree. I mean, I would have loved to have had that experience to have seen it or to see it in a theater with a bunch of like-minded people who probably feel the same way about it, who know about it, just to be in that kind of crowd with like everyone who is enjoying it. That would have been a lot of fun because I've only time I've watched it has been like at home alone or with a couple of friends that like if I've shown it to them. But to see that with a nice crowd that's like on the same wavelength about what this movie is and experiencing it like that would have been a really great time to have. So I'm pretty jealous about that, actually.
Oh man, I didn't mean to do that to you, but it's one of those
No,
things.
you're good.
It's you go at 11 p.m. to that movie 10 years after it comes out. You know everybody there is either there because they know what they're walking into, or they're with
Yeah.
somebody that they feel is like this is up their alley. So as you said, it's everything that you'd expect. And I got a chance to chat with Adam Wingard after for a
Oh,
couple
nice.
minutes, and he's a lovely dude and hit me with a couple things like a Hitchcock movie I hadn't seen called Shadow of a Doubt
Yep.
that this
Very good.
movie pulls from a lot. A movie called Time Bomb starring Michael Biehn and Patsy Kensit, which was like a direct-to-video kind of movie.
Yeah.
And visually, like that, was an early 90s, like, action sci-fi thriller. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh man, The Matrix pulls from this, as well as Existenz, as well as. And it's
Yeah.
just like, man, how deep do we go in terms of this? Or it's like all the Halloween and the Terminator and First Blood and
Yeah, I mean that's why that was the thing that surprised me about it the most. Like when I mentioned earlier, I was like, there is a lot of genre work going on in a movie that's like an hour and 45 minutes, and usually you can't really blend all those and have that all work. Like usually one might come up short. And that was the thing that surprised me the most when I first saw it. I was like, well, it's wearing a lot of hats and wearing it well, and like it's succeeding at all of them. And I was pleasantly surprised that they were able to do that. But that was the first thing that stood out to me about it. I was like, this is a lot, and they're managing to make this not be chaotic or a mess. This is a well-oiled machine somehow, even though it's blending all these different genres. And that was you see a lot of like little homages to movies that you kind of love growing up. It's like it feels like a lot of it feels very 80s influence, like 80s like action movie influence too. But you see a lot of the movies that you mentioned, and you're just like, it feels good like when a filmmaker is making movies like this, and you can tell how much they appreciate other genre films like this, and they're just trying to make their own little entry into that. You can tell that's what this was, and completely successful, like 100% successful. And like you said earlier too, like also darkly uncomfortably funny in all the right spots too.
it's so bizarre. Like you said, it's like it's performed with such a deft hand by a filmmaker and a writer whom this was a $4.5 million movie, and didn't even have a $2 million movie before this, and this looks like a 30 or 20 or 30 million dollar movie, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the thing to me about this, outside how shocking, how careful and well placed so many things are about the movie, and a lot of the genre touches you talked about.
Yeah.
What about this movie, like what shocks you, or what was the first thing that stood out to you that really shocked you, that still shocks you?
I was trying to think about that earlier because I think what completely surprised me the most is, even though it is playing with all these different genres and stuff, and a lot of it is played for kind of dark sense of humor, it is also able to play a very serious story too. I mean, the idea of this. I mean, I guess the one thing that gets to me the most is like the idea of a stranger coming to live in your home, saying that they, you know, knew your son, who, you know, they were in war together, and his son passed away, right? So like, there's this idea like a family being like so, especially the mom in that situation being so wanting to be connected to her son in a way again, that, you know, you kind of accept this kind of uninvited guest into your home, not really doing much to look into their story, basically, you know, like not doing your due diligence, like, oh, I wonder if this person's telling the truth. Like, they only get like, she gets basic information from him that he can kind of prove, but it still doesn't feel like it would be enough for someone to, yeah, let me stay in your home, and that kind of thing, right? So, and I like that there's one character that is automatically suspicious, which is the daughter, and you need to have that one person that's like one rational person who's like, why,
Right.
no, like that's
Well,
not gonna fly.
It's interesting you bring that up. Do you have the feeling or the belief, beginning of the movie, we just see these boots and this hard breathing and this insane synth score, big boom of
Yeah.
bass, very John Carpenter-esque. And, Dan Stevens, who is like alarmingly handsome. And the mom like answers the door. I wonder if you have the same feeling. In the first moment, I feel she's disarmed by how handsome this man is that's here at her house in New Mexico,
Yeah.
or who's this handsome man? And then all of a sudden he says something about her son, and he's immediately an avatar. Like, if he, that's, in a movie that has a lot of like tonal choices about a lot of performances, and Dan Stevens you know, like absolutely kills it.
Yeah.
Does it feel that way to you too? Like there's a level of that, or am I way off?
No, 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 no. I totally feel that too, because like, I guess the good thing about Dan Stevens in this is that he is right off the bat charming, right? It's how he looks, it's how he acts. So even when you're watching it beyond that scene and you're like, oh, something seems off, he does things that kind of pull you back, like, oh, well, maybe he's not so bad. And it has a lot to do with how charming he is. So
Yeah.
I think that is what she is kind of disarmed by when she first opens the door and sees him, is that there's this, devastatingly handsome guy at the front door. And then he says all the right things that he needs to say to really kind of pull at her emotional heartstrings. And then it's like immediately she's like, this son that she lost, like, it's like he's basically there again after
Right.
after that little initial conversation. And I think that, leading with that emotion would make it, that is plausible to me. Like, I mean, I personally, if that I would be more in the lane of the daughter. I think if I was like, hey, we don't know who this person is, like, why are we
Yeah.
just letting him stay in our house? But I could also understand how someone could be, I guess manipulate might be the right word, but like be convinced to like allow this person to stay in their home. And honestly, to me, the scariest idea about it is like, there is this kind of threat in your home. You don't know anything about him really. And then, as if you're in the role of the daughter, having to suspect, like, all right, I feel like something's off. Let me look into this more. And then the more you're looking into it, you're finding out like this is not right. And then having to maybe maintain like a level of like, I don't want to let on to him that I don't think everything's not quite right yet. That's a pretty scary idea too, of just trying to walk that line of, I need to investigate this, but he clearly says, I believe he's really off. I don't know what he can do if he does find out that I know something. Now, of course, she throws it all out the window when she's like emotional about her boyfriend being arrested, and she's just like,
Shit.
and she throws it out. I mean, throws it out there
Dude,
to him, like in front of her mom, in front of her dad, in front of everyone.
that guy's life is over. His life
Yeah.
is over. Like that's the biggest piece of, aside from the two kids that are directly affected, like the collateral damage, where like that guy's in prison for 30 years to
Yeah.
life, most likely. And it's like he dealt a little weed. Like,
Yeah.
by all accounts. But the big shocking thing to me, there's this thing that happens early in the movie where we're kind of led to like David a little bit. He's the ear you can pull on, the shoulder you can lean on. He's very understanding, seems pretty patient. And he has this clear intention to be close to Luke, the young son,
Right.
who's struggling with the bullies at school and everything. And they go to this bar. They follow these football players to this bar, and there's this fantastic fight scene, incredible fight scene that's sewn up so well. And this is where I start to get we're talking about movies about mistaken identities or hidden identities and stuff like that. And there's a movie series that's referenced in this movie as well as by the writer, by Simon Barrett, called The Stepfather, originally starring Terry O'Quinn.
Yeah.
Those movies, the first two movies, rule, especially the first one. I get like we're genre people clearly.
Yeah, I just got the 4K like a week ago. Yeah,
hell yes. Is that like a Vinegar Syndrome or something, or a Scream Factory?
Scream Factory.
It's got to be something cool. I was like, it's got to be something cool. I just got the Arrow for Desperado, and I'm so excited.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we could probably nerd out forever, dude.
Yeah, Arrow Bros. So I don't find that fight scene terribly shocking. I just feel like it's technically so well done, and the score is great, and the sound design is great. All that techie crap. The really shocking moment is, there's this big party that happens and whatever, but David wants a gun, and suddenly Ethan Embry's there to sell him a gun, which is pretty shocking. But we were talking about how this movie wears many hats, or a hat on a hat, and Joel David Moore's in this movie, who's like a somewhat known actor as well, and like runs a straight line like 250 feet during this transaction, and Dan Stevens shoots him in the head, and his hat pops up like 10 or 15 feet in the air. And like, to me, like, if you're not laughing at that point, or if you don't understand that this movie is funny at that point, I just remember being so shocked the first time I saw this and laughing at it too, and feeling like, is it okay what I'm doing, or like what I'm feeling? Like, I didn't understand the intentionality of it. I was just so shocked by so much of it. But
yeah, you almost feel like it's so uncomfortable. Like you're like, I don't know what else to do except laugh. Like I really shouldn't be laughing at like someone getting like shot in the head like that. But I mean, it's like I mean, it's framed so it's like a cartoon when you watch it pop. You're like, oh, like that. I like chuckled myself too. And like, but it's a mix of like having that humor and then also having like a scene that is pretty frightening, particularly if you're in his situation where like you watch him shoot someone in the head point blank, and then he's about to shoot you, and it's like the gun jams or whatever, and he doesn't shoot him, and he just darts. And like my whole time watching, I was like, every time someone runs away like that, I was like, why do they just run the straight line? I mean, there should just be
serpentine, bro.
Some zigzagging or something, right? And but it was so well done. It's a good mix of like that would be a frightening situation, but also it's funny by how it all wraps up.
I gotta say, in this moment too, the gun doesn't jam. There was one bullet in the gun.
Oh yeah.
And Dan Stevens' character, or David, whatever, this is part of the beauty of this performance too. He sees there's one bullet in the gun, and it's like he's frustrated, and then he just like throws it away. Like there's a moment of frustration, reloads the gun, and then there's this moment of like enjoying the challenge of shooting him from further away.
Yeah.
That performance is so layered and so intentional. It's like whatever kind of sauce or whatever that is this, he's the sauce that the stick that stirs the drink, whatever. That's what I'm looking for. Ultimately, what I'm looking for. Yeah. He's the stick that stirs the drink. He's so fucking and surrounded by a bunch of pretty solid performances ultimately.
Yeah, really.
Do you have an MVP in this movie of any of the like smaller performances maybe?
I actually think that Brendan as Luke is pretty good. I also love the late Lance Reddick's also always a reliable presence. Always a reliable presence too. And I think
my brain.
I think even though she probably second to Dan Stevens has the biggest role in the movie, but Micah Monroe does a lot with a character that's not entirely like fully developed. Like she has to like kind of just play the stereotype of like she almost seems like the annoyed older sister, or like, she's like, "All right, I'm 20 years old and I feel like I should be allowed to do what I want to do, but I'm living at their house, so I can't." So she has like all those like kind of stereotypical conflicts that role like that requires, but she does a lot with something that could have just been pretty thin on paper, and
Yeah.
does a lot with it. And I really enjoyed her because even by the end of it, because she seems so like disinterested with anything that's going on at her home. Like, it's not like she doesn't like love her brother, but she's like, she has her own life, and like that's what it seems like her priorities are. And I do love, without saying too much, by the end of it, they are like kind of, her and her brother are like fully connected by the end of the movie, and not by saying a lot, but it's just more by the actions where her brother is still kind of convinced her like, hey, like David wouldn't hurt us, like what's wrong? And then she just has to drop that, she's crying and just says like he killed mom and dad, and all he has to do is just look at her and knows that she's telling the truth, and she doesn't really have to say a lot. And now it's almost like without it's been unspoken that they only have each other now. And I think that she conveys a lot of that without it very necessarily being there. It's not like a incredibly like well written part, but I think she does a lot with it to make it more than what it is.
I agree with you. I think especially in the moment where the one that sticks out to me in this viewing specifically, is somebody who is spends their social or free time doing what Zeke does in this movie a lot. But she has a moment on the swing set where she's trying to tell her boyfriend what she's going through with this weirdo in her house and all this other stuff that's been happening in her brother's death. And her boyfriend kind of is like, stoned. Yeah, that life sucks. And she has a couple really good moments. I don't know. To me, she's like one of those like super high echelon. I don't know. Not that there are any echelons, but she's like a scream queen to me with It Follows and this and Long Legs. And she's just, as you said, she's fantastic, especially a lot of the time in this movie. It's moments where people aren't saying anything. I laughed so hard at so many cuts of Dan Stevens where the score just goes and into nothing, unblinking, and you're like, what is with this guy? What is going on here? But you plucked the standout performance that's not Dan Stevens specifically out of my mind when you said Lance Reddick, like R.I.P. When I saw this at Vidiots and had the conversations with a couple folks that worked on the movie, it was stated in the crowd and said again that Lance Reddick saw this. He looked at this completely straightforward, looked at this like very seriously, and took a while to see the movie and then go, oh wait, I'm the straight man in this crazy universe. And if that performance isn't so self-serious and serious to the context and the situation that the character's in and everything, the movie isn't half as good as it is. He does so much lifting because this is, I mean, I guess there's this point where we find out we're on board with the daughter, right? That she knows there's something wrong with this guy because, and this is in the commentary, David has a phone conversation. And she hears him on the phone right by the window discussing very sensitive stuff. And apparently Adam Wingard was like, why did we make this decision? This is like kind of sloppy of this guy. And my podcast co-host on Review mentions that as well, where he's like, why does he do this thing? He seems like Jason Bourne, man. What's going on here? But I lost my thread there. But the Lance Reddick with the KPG stuff. Where that comes into play, where Micah Monroe calls about David. And did you notice this? Where the photo that pops up, where it says David Collins, it's not Dan Stevens.
Yeah.
Do you think David Collins was one of the dudes killed in the fire that Dan Stevens started, and he just took his dog tags, and he was just some
So
guy?
that's what I've always thought, like,
Yeah,
from
okay,
watching
me
it.
too.
Because like the idea that I believed it's something a bit more nefarious, and that's why he's completely taken someone's identity and all that. So that's what I assumed was the case.
Yeah.
That makes most sense to me.
Me too. I know there's a belief online that this may be the son, and he's already had some
Oh,
sort of surgery, which
surgery.
is a fun thought, but a little far fetched.
Yeah,
And I like the idea that this is a dude that did serve with the son. His name's
yeah,
not David Collins. He's assuming someone else's identity, and he's already in the process of that. And that's the whole deal. And also the idea of, like, if he were the son, the sexual tension between Dan Stevens and Mike
yeah.
Monroe. Too
Wouldn't work.
gross.
It would not
Too
work at all.
weird. Too
Would
weird.
not work at all. I do like that. Even though she is automatically suspicious of him, I'm
Yeah.
glad it's not played that way. The entirety. It starts that
Right.
way. You're like, hey, like, why are you? Who is this guy? Like, she's very dismissive, and I love the conversation that she has in the other room with her mom, where she's like, she's going to a party, and the mom's like, yeah, invite him to the party.
Yeah.
And then she comes out like so nonchalant, like, do you want to go to this party with me? Like, she doesn't really want him to go. But then
I
by
would
the time
love
they,
to.
I would love to. But then by the time they get there and she's seeing how he's playing the crowd and all that, she seems like, all right, he's not as bad maybe as I thought he was.
Right.
Like, yeah. So I'm glad that there's that little moment of like, oh, maybe I should let my guard down a bit. And I like that with Luke from the beginning. He clearly needs someone who he can look up to in a way that he probably can't with his sister or his mom or even his dad. His dad's like,
Oh, definitely not his dad.
all over
Yeah.
not at all. And so it's interesting watching it and then thinking about it after it's over, because all the stuff that he does do, it seems very to help, seems very genuine and very like, I don't want to hate this guy. Like, he's helping Luke like confront bullies now, maybe not in the best way, probably not following him to a bar and then setting up a situation where they can get their asses kicked. But he is teaching him how to take care of himself though, and not be like taken advantage of in a way. So
Right.
you're watching this thing like, oh, seems like a good dude. Like something's off, but still a good dude. And even by the end of it, I'm like, yeah, some bad shit, but still, there was some good in there, right? Like somewhere in there.
It's one of those things where it's like, well, your good intentions don't make the world go round or whatever. Where it's like, this is a well-intentioned guy. That's the thing that's weird. He's like an protagonist. Like he's some sort of meld where the mom clearly needs some sort of vessel to grieve through. The dad clearly needs a drinking buddy. The son clearly needs a role model, a protector, some sort of guidance. The daughter clearly needs someone that is checked in and interested in her and what is going on with her. And you were talking about the party. It's so disarming, this whole thing where we've gone through this bar experience and we're like, what is up with this dude? Like, this is some sort of MK Ultra military something. What's happening? And we go to this party and he's like lifting kegs and like smashing half of joints and single drags. And like another moment I laugh at where, there's a sex scene in the movie and Kristen says, it seems like you're not into this. And he's like, how about now? And she's like, oh, wow. So funny. But like when the boyfriend shows up, who like seems like he's going to be physically abusive or whatnot, where he like just checks that guy immediately. I immediately get back into the good graces of this character. As you said, it's like, it's so hard to pick and choose. I also have another question for you. How did you watch? You watched this again today, right?
Yeah.
How did you watch it?
I actually have the Blu-ray, so I watched it just on Blu-ray on my TV in my room. Yeah, surround sound, which was great because like the score sounds amazing on surround sound. Yeah,
I have the Second Sight Films 4K. It's like a UK version of Arrow Video for those that are not informed. It plays on my Xbox Series X. Lucky me, like no region problems or anything. It was color corrected, I guess, to whatever degree for 4K. It's gorgeous. The sound
Yeah.
is, I assume, is about probably some similar to what it is on Blu-ray. It's great. And the synthesizers that Steve Moore uses in this movie, apparently one of them was also used for this Halloween 3 Season of the Witch score.
Oh, nice. That's
Which
so funny.
is
I just did an episode.
wild if true.
With David. The episode with David about that movie. Just
Really?
so funny. Yeah. It'll be out in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Are you doing a bunch of horror scary movies?
Yeah, so we last year because of the strike, there was no news to really report on. So we were like, all right, we're gonna cover horror movies for the month of September and October. So we did this whole like Tales of Horror series that did really well last year. So we did it again this year. And this time we kind of just have a big list of horror movies for people to choose from. Or if they have one that they really wanted to talk about, they can totally bring that one in. And he chose Halloween 3, and I had never talked about it on the show with anyone. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun because I used to have like a lot of like immature feelings about it when I was younger. It was like, I don't want to. Michael Myers isn't in it. Fuck that movie. And then eventually, I appreciate it for what it is on its own, and I've grown to like it a lot. So yeah, that's awesome. That's a nice little tidbit about the music.
It's kind of like this movie in that, like, if you go in completely cold and have no idea what to expect, you're probably going to have a good time if you're not too serious about it.
Right.
That's how I feel about Season of the Witch anyway. I love that y'all do this as well. On the review this year, we're doing Spooky Season again. We did it last year.
Nice.
Very quickly, Alien or Aliens?
Alien. Both good. I mean, they're just so well. They're so different. I mean, it's hard to choose. They're both great. They're like one's like Halloween in space. The other one's like a hardcore like action movie. But they're both very good. I just give a slight edge to Alien.
Yeah, we did a movie that is super near and dear to my heart for Spooky Season, The Monster Squad.
Okay,
which is not a movie that I think that's the one movie that the guest doesn't reference.
Probably.
Yeah. But join Back to the Blockbuster and Review for so much horror content, including the guest twice, and watch the guest.
There you go.
I think I've watched this movie 3 or 4 times this year now. I feel sick. I feel like sick.
No, it's good, man. It's one of those movies. I think it kind of demands the. I mean, if you have a movie that you really love, and I think when you watch it, you kind of discover even one more new thing about it when you're watching it. I mean, that is always really good. And like I said, man, I've been trying to like discuss this movie on the show for a long time, even before the anniversary was coming up. I would try to throw it at some people, and like no one really wanted to do it, or they were it just never came out about. But I was like, well, it's been out for 10 years now, so maybe this is a chance to do it. And timing was perfect too. I mean, I haven't watched it as much as you have this year, but I have watched it a lot in general.
In my defense, it's all been for podcasts. In my defense,
and the fact that you're willing to cover it on your show and then also come on here and talk about it is, I guess, a testament of how good it is too. Though, like you're willing to have a different conversation with like maybe something else comes out of that, a different conversation that you didn't have on yours. So like that's the cool thing about a movie like this.
This is for me. I don't know if you put things on rating systems. I know a lot of people don't like to do that, but this is like a 5-star movie to me. I love this movie. This is not a perfect movie. It is far from a perfect movie, but I wouldn't have watched it several times this year and be in my 3rd conversation about it this year if I didn't think it was something really special. We all know that there's one perfect movie out there. It's Milos Forman's Amadeus. We get it. It's fine. But I can't watch a 3-hour movie that just takes the wind out of my sails 4 times in a year. I can't do it. So
a lot of time and dedication.
I can't do
it. You had previously mentioned how this movie homages references a lot of other movies. I want to ask you, like, if you want to point out a few scenes or that you can think of that you're watching that scene, you're like, oh, this feels like a direct homage to like this particular film. Like, if there's anything that stands out to you the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, on this most recent viewing, just because I've mentioned, I think a lot of movies, and there's one that I haven't. There are a couple points. Once in the bar when Dan Stevens runs his hand down his face, wipes his face off.
Yeah,
Yeah, I said that on purpose. And there's a point where he flips out a butterfly knife and gives it to Luke.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, there's a lot of face off in
yeah,
this movie as well. And it hadn't really hit me until this viewing. I definitely noticed skeletons, pumpkins, witches, Halloween stuff, and stuff from The
yeah.
Stepfather, certainly, because those are the first two, again, are movies that I really, really love. Uh, I recently rewatched First Blood. Believe it or not, those who are, again, uninformed, it's called First Blood.
But
And I love that movie. It's incredible, by the
yep.
way, but I didn't realize how, again, how many things. Apparently, also, this movie, their original intention was to shoot in the Pacific Northwest, where I'm from and where Rambo takes place. First Blood, I did it to myself. First Blood takes place. There's a movie called Death Dream. It goes by another title. It's directed by Bob Clark, dude who did Christmas Story and Black
And
Christmas.
Black Christmas. Yeah.
Yep. Interesting filmography. One of the most interesting director
Yeah,
filmographies ever.
I look at his stuff and just go, like, how did he jump from that to that? I mean,
It's
great.
so crazy. That
Like great.
filmography is
It's
nuts.
insane. And you watch like Black Christmas, you're like, yeah, that's a really great horror movie. I wonder if he made like a bunch more. And like, nope. It's like, oh, he
No,
just like threw that out there. Like, hey, that was yeah.
it's
That
like, "I'll
always
do
amazes me, man.
one of the best ones and then walk away." It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
all
walk
right,
away. Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Um, the uh, the big thing that stands out to me more than anything else anymore, and this is it's a self-referential thing according to Adam Wingard, because he told me he felt it was his indoctrination into the Illuminati. Do you realize there's a triangle in almost every single frame of this movie?
I don't think I paid attention to that, and I'm very curious to hear you explain it. Yeah.
It's crazy. The next time you see it, it will drive you up a wall.
Dude, I might go back and like look at that again tonight.
Yeah. Like, there's a point where Dan Stevens is tutoring, Luke at math, and he's spinning a triangle in his hand, and there's a triangle on a board, and Micah Monroe wears a triangle necklace, and somebody is wearing a triangle. It's all
Yeah.
the time, all the time. KPG's logo is a flipped down triangle. And I do want to get into the KPG stuff a little bit.
Yeah,
Do you have
yeah,
thoughts about that?
yeah. What are your yeah? I want to hear what you have to say first. Hold on, I'll jump in.
I like it. I think it
Yeah,
makes the movie work.
yeah,
I
yeah,
There is something about it to me, like that. I guess if I had to go, like, I'm gonna be like hardcore about this, outside of some of the tonal things with actors at times, or
yeah,
performances at times, I should say, or who knows the reasoning, but um the tonal shift the movie takes when
yeah,
KPG gets involved, I'm on board,
yeah.
fully on board. And the movie has does the movie move at a good clip for you?
Oh yeah, I think it moves pretty well.
It feels like a breeze
It's a
to
breeze,
me
yeah,
as
and
well.
yeah, for something that like that's an hour and 40 some odd minutes, like comes off more like it's like 90. Like it feels
Yeah,
shorter than
I
what it
agree.
is. It moves pretty brisk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's so good that the idea that the military is using a third party contractor to do its dirty deeds,
It's
and keep things clean, at least on their book, I mean, it's such a simple piece of writing that really works, that floats for me. It's one of those things where, when KPG shows up, when all is said and done, I'd rather it's corporate guys or mercenaries than like the military coming back to get their guy. Like, I don't know if
right,
that's a
right.
conscious choice, but like, I prefer it.
Yeah. No, I agree
Yeah.
with you. I'm always amazed too because I remember when I first watched it, and the whole time I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. But in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, well, there has to be an explanation for like all this, and I hope the explanation is good because if the explanation is sloppy, it'll take me out of it. If it's like, oh, that's what's going on. Um, I think that's where this could have fallen apart. I was like, oh, that's kind of cheesy. I don't know if I can get with that. But once the explanation was, and again, it's not like too heavy-handed. I'm glad that's not the case. It doesn't really over-explain itself. I'm glad that's not the case too.
Yeah.
It was enough for me to be like, all right, I dig it. It's fine. I can totally go with that. And especially when it's described on like basically how they kind of essentially programmed him. Like then you're like, okay, this is why he moves like a fucking machine. He's almost like a robot.
Yeah.
At
He's
this
like the
point.
Terminator.
He's like the Terminator, yeah. So like all those little things that he's doing earlier in the movie make more sense, and then he fully almost turns into that completely by the time he's completely exposed. So you're like, oh, okay, like I totally get I picking up what they're putting down, and I'm okay with like what the explanation is.
Well, and he thinks, as you said, as we've said, like he thinks he's helping the family. Dad needs a promotion, right. Kill the boss.
Kill the boss.
Like, so, like daughter has a loser boyfriend that dad doesn't like, get rid of the boyfriend. Like,
yeah,
so like he seems to think he's doing good or helping. He's just misguided. And it's like, no, and this is again, like where the movie wins us back. And it's like, do you feel any sort of pull in terms of the costume design of this movie? Does it do anything for you? Like, does it grab you?
Yeah, some of it does. I mean, I mean a lot of the stuff that Dan Stevens has to wear, I think is great. I like, some of the jacket, like he like very like kind of like he just looks cool. Like, he exudes like kind of confidence, and it comes in like how he looks and how he presents himself.
When he gets out of the shower,
like glistening. And then like even like this, we see Micah Monroe in a lot of things, but even like the diner outfit that she has to wear in the movie, which is a lot of the images from the film like online that you find that she's mostly in that for something like the cover art for the movie too, that's used in different countries and all that. So like even that stands out a bit. Like there's a lot of, I think there's a lot as far as like production design, costuming, all that with very little. It made it seem like they had a lot more to work with than they actually did. And that's what also is very surprising. It feels like a much bigger movie in all stages of it than it actually is.
I agree. That's well put. It didn't hit me again until this viewing that I'm like, oh shit, Sarah Connor.
Yeah.
Like, oh, whoa, that's the costume design. That's the attitude. That's the, like, a little more advanced.
It like the 80s kind of hair, like,
hair
going
exactly.
On. Yeah.
Exactly. Is where, you asked me, point out homages, etc. Oh, wow, this is totally Sarah Connor. And this jacket you mentioned that he has when he kind of, the principal scene.
Yeah.
When the bully kid is being bully kid and Luke smashes a yardstick on his face. And does it seem simple to you that, like, why is David the one that has to go, 1 second, let me ask the kid what happened before we go into the principal's office?
Yeah, that is not his mother.
They're so checked out. I think the parents
that's the thing is,
checked out.
They both are. Like she's checked out due to like her grief and all that, and trying to and that's her big thing. And the husband is so trying to figure out the best way to describe him. He's focused on work and all that stuff too, but he seems also like disinterested in like all the things going on in the home too. And like the two authority figures are checked out. I won't say Anna's necessarily checked out, but she's definitely focused on her own life, at least when we first meet her. So yeah, the one person that is the one listening, the one paying attention, is the one that's like, hey, like I've already assessed the situation. He wouldn't just like jump on this kid for no reason. Let's find out what happened. And and that's another way that even by this point, David's done some fucked up stuff already. Pulls you back again because he's like, okay, let me assess the situation. He assesses it and realizes like, okay, this person messed with him again, called him something he shouldn't have called him, and then this is what happened. And I just love how he breaks down that principal who, like, who was initially going to do something much worse to Luke, right? And he's like, well, no, like
Oh
this is
yeah.
what's going to happen because like I kind of, it's not funny, but it's the way that it's so he easily breaks it down. Like, well, what did he call him? And he's like, oh, yeah, he called him this, right? Well, that's a hate crime. He like the way he just explains it so easily is like that's what's funny about it to me. That I was like, oh, he took it there and like made that work. And
Yeah.
the principal was like, I love by the end of it. He's like, I didn't even know he was gay. Like he like I had like that's made the whole thing
Like,
not kind of funny.
dude, for me, it's the thing where the principal. I have favorite lines in general, but I definitely have two in this movie. And when the principal says, "Who are you anyway?" and he says,
yeah.
"I'm a friend of the family." Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. My favorite line in this movie, and this is maybe a top 25 line for me all time, when Dan Stevens is in the bar and he's got all the money and he's
Yeah.
getting ready to pay for drinks and stuff, and the kid Luke is like, "What are you, rich or something?" And Dan Stevens, in a beautiful actor throwaway, "Cash is easy to get." And he just like moves on.
Yeah.
Like it's that
Yeah.
is I think what is makes this movie work so well for me is it never makes a big deal out of anything. It never lets anything become a big deal. Dude
Right.
lifting kegs, not a big deal. Smashing half a joint, not a big deal. Shooting somebody, not a big deal. And it also is part of what makes it weird. Have you
Yeah.
ever noticed in this movie that when people are pulling out guns or murdering other people or breaking yardsticks on people's faces or getting in bar fights, that people don't freak out for the most part,
Yeah,
except for
it's
the
very
girls in the bar fight?
yeah, and their freak out is like very like almost like horror movie esque. Like they just have that shot of them like screaming and then like running out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but everyone else seems to be a little bit more flippant and nonchalant about what's going on
I
around them.
wonder if that's like some sort of a statement about gun culture in America. Like, I don't
Could be,
know.
yeah,
This movie is so intentional that I
yeah,
wonder if that isn't a big piece of it. Like, hard to say. Hard to say.
yeah. I mean, I also love like in that bar scene, like the whole intention is like we're gonna buy. I'm gonna get shots for those girls because I've noticed they were like drinking cheap beer. He's gonna send those two Cosmos over
Blowjob shots.
blow shot shots too, because he know like knowing what those shots are, and then with the drinks that he gets for the guys, that is going to rile them up. There's going to be some kind of like it's all intentional on his part. He knows they're going to come
He's an
over. He knows there's
instigator.
going to be, he knows there's going to be some kind of fight. He knows he's going to win said fight, and then also the explanation about like how he's basically telling like the bar owner how to explain what happened.
It's
And
great.
because you don't want anyone to that you were like serving minors. So he knows from like the start how that's all going to play out by the end of it. And I thought that was really cool to like watching it this time. I was like, oh, it's just he's so meticulous about everything that he does, except for the conversation you mentioned on the phone where he easily heard
Right.
outside. But everything else is just so
Let it slide.
meticulous and well
Let's let
thought out.
it slide.
Yeah. But everything else is so meticulous and well thought out. Like he knows how this is going to play out from start to finish. And
Well, and
that's
it
cool
escalates
about it too.
beautifully. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
escalates beautifully. Like, it has a tendency to follow the rule of 3, where it hits a point 3 times, and that 3rd time is where it, like, hits some sort of a maximum in terms of David having a freak out, in terms of David wanting to do something for Luke. Like, the penultimate things, like, the pillars of this movie, like, are built so well.
Yeah.
It's what I think maybe, as we're having this lovely discussion, I probably need to share this a little more openly with people. Maybe have a little more trust in people or people's belief in me that, like,
Yeah.
we're strangers here. We're having a
Yeah. Yeah.
lovely discussion about a disturbing thing. Everything's
Yeah.
fine. So I
Everything's
think
good.
maybe the big lesson that I'm learning is that um if I go in and say, like, yeah, it's a weird movie, it's got a strange sense of humor, that I can probably just, there's something. Do you feel like you need to, when you share this with people, do you point out the brutality?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and there's a lot about the movie I tend to point out, and I probably should step that back because, like, sometimes I get see my friends when I'm explaining, like, "Oh, this is what the basic plot is," and they're just like, "Oh," and then they'll go on like IMDb and like look it up, and like, that still doesn't look like something I really want to watch. But then they look at like the rating on there, which is like pretty decent for the movie. They're like, oh well, that's promising. And then they'll look up stuff on their own. They're like, oh, it has like a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like that's
Oh
even
wow.
more promising.
Yeah.
That's even more
Oh.
promising. So they some of my friends need like multiple reasons to watch certain things, especially if they never heard of it. So I feel the need to explain it a bit more than I probably should. But lately, when people I've recommended to, I've tried to let them go in as blind as I can, because that probably is the best way for them to see it, because that's how I pretty much saw it when I first saw it. But I think I get why you're like reluctant to share it with like everyone. I guess, at the end of the day too, if they're not catching on to all the homages and like all that stuff and like all the different layers of the movie, it's still at its core a fun action thriller on its own. So it's like it's entertaining in that level, right? If they're not catching everything else, they could enjoy it on that level too. So I think it's a bit more like accessible than people might give it credit for. But what makes it kind of maybe less accessible is that there's a lot more going on that you have to really pay attention to, or see what maybe the director and the writer were kind of throwing out there. Because like, hey, you could miss it and still enjoy it, but if you catch it, you're like, oh, that'll make me enjoy the movie even more, because there's a lot more being said here than meets the eye, I guess.
I love that you said "then meets the eye." Transformers, Revenge the Fallen, baby, revenge them. I agree. I guess it's just one of those things that I just need to be like, hey, like, what do you like? What do you find accessible? Yada, 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 yada. And just have those conversations with people. I want to talk too a little bit about the technical filmmaking aspects of this.
Yep.
And the budgetary restrictions of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most things in this movie are practical, with a couple of, exceptions to CG. I think they were using very low payload squibs and using digital enhancement and whatnot to, make it pop. But the sound design and the special effects and the practicality, as we're talking about, how brutal this movie is.
Yeah.
When there's a punch or a kick or glass breaking or a bone breaking or somebody getting shot, that there's a level of, believability, if you're in the world of the movie, that happens with like that practical thing. I'm all about, I want people to be safe above anything and everything.
Course,
if they can use exceptionally low payload squibs and deliver, this, as opposed to, some of the later Rambo movies that are full CG, and that's like fine. It just seemed rushed, I guess. I don't know how to put it. But, I just think technically this movie is so proficient.
Yeah. It really is. I completely agree with that. I mean, like every punch, every gunshot, I felt like I feel it as well.
Yeah.
And, like, you feel the pop, you feel the crack, like all that kind of stuff. I think that helps a lot. So I really agree with that. Again, I'm still amazed by what they were able to do with so little money by movie standards.
Man.
But it feels like it can stand up against like other action movies that have more money to work with, and that is amazing to me. You can do a lot with very little.
Well, and I don't know what the movie was from 2014 that took this title from box office. This was the comedy event of 2014, people. You fucked up seeing that pardon me. You messed up seeing that big budget comedy. You should have seen that. You should have watched The Guest.
Yeah.
I got very lucky to see it, I think, within a year of when it came out. And this is a movie too, when I describe it to people, it's like, yeah, I can go super inside baseball, but like, yeah, it's funny, it's kooky. It was like, a Midnight Madness movie at Sundance that people, really liked in terms of like the festival circuit kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Like it's very, it's very, very specific. And part of the reason why I touched on the costume design earlier and we were talking about stretching dollars and everything. Yeah. The movie hits this like furious pace when Luke, after the principal tells David, but like, you killed my dad's boss, right? It's totally cool.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, holy shit. But the movie,
good dark humor too. Like, that should be funny.
Great. But the movie is just like barreling forward, and the KPG dudes show up, and the costumes of these guys and the equipment and everything, it's just like to a T.
Yeah.
The Tahoes are great. I love that everybody else in this movie seems to drive like some 1980s or 90s like junker car.
Yeah.
Except like these military dudes are driving these like, you know, brand new all black on black on black Tahoes.
Yep.
And they get out decked to the nines and approach Sheila Kelly, the mom, and they're like, hey, like guns out, dudes like walking the perimeter, and she's like, hey, what's up, friends? I get like no one reacts
Yeah.
to like the insane armament that exists in this movie.
Yeah. And I guess like that for her, I mean, you mentioned before, she's just checked out, and like, but
Right.
how checked out can you be where that would that would be
Right.
more of a? I mean, I feel like the only time she truly checks in, and it's unfortunate, it's right before she dies, is when she is kind of realizing as he's sitting there, you know, wounded, and still trying to explain to her like what's going on. And I also love the way he's explaining to her, like, like it's so like I didn't want this to happen. I'm really sorry. Like he seems like he's like apologetic.
I was just here to help you. I just wanted to help you guys.
And then like
I'm a nice guy.
And then he's like, you know, she's like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, it'll take too long to explain. And then it's just so like funny the way that he's trying to kind of explain what's going on, but like basically, and with so many words about telling her like, you're not gonna get out of this, without telling her directly, like, you're not gonna get out of this. Like everything he's saying to her is like, you know, my cover's blown, so therefore you know what's going on, so therefore I have to get rid of you, because like they said, he's programmed to protect his identity at all costs, right?
At all costs.
And so even if that is, but you know, her even having an inkling of what's going on, that was kind of like her, that was it for her.
His programming can't be broken now. This is like, there's no walking this back.
Yeah.
The house is being blown to smithereens, and we see Dan Stevens is shot. And in another beautiful like piece of acting, he looks at this bullet hole in his leg, and he's like, "Oh God," and like ties it off, and then has this nice little thing where I think like we were talking about, you know, trains hitting people, of him telling the mom what's going on, and she's like, "Oh no, this is very bad."
Yeah.
He stabs her, and you're just like, this is the moment where I'm like, oh, now the movie is also saying, similar to David, there is no turning back.
Right.
There have been some brutal moments, but now like get ready. And you know, in the next, you know, move, I really like this kind of above camera shot and the car moment where, you know, Dan Stevens just rams that hearing aid Jeep into the station wagon of the dad, and then is annoyed that he has to shoot the dad.
Yeah.
And then kind of like annoyed that he has to shoot the friend in the diner. And then his stolen grenades. After this girl to no reaction, and Stevie B comes on. And he blows the place up, murdering, I don't know, a dozen people.
So when I first saw the movie, that was like instantly one of my favorite scenes. I just love the way, like, I mean, it's just like he's coming here to ask her, like, yeah, I know, like, you're the only one that's gonna know where Anna is because you guys work together. Like, basically, hey, tell me where she is, and he can just tell by her, like, her kind of like demeanor of like her, like, not really giving.
He's like, anxious,
anxious, and then he just like point blank just shoots her, like, and he also seems like annoyed that he has to do that too. And then that like song kicked in, and then it's the way that he has the grenades, and it's the way like he pops them all. That's just so like graceful. Everything about that scene just seemed cool, even though I shouldn't be like thinking that's cool because he's about to murder, you know, like dozen people. But
I think you're supposed to feel like this whole movie is like this juxtaposition, right? It's like this dichotomy. It's like, is this guy the protagonist? Is he the antagonist? Where am I? What am I doing? What's real? What's not real? And like at this point, the movie's like, who cares? Like I think several viewings ago at this point, let's be honest, I stopped caring. I just fell into what you're at. It's like, yeah, the movie set me up for what it's doing, and I can either be okay with it and like it, or I can not be okay with it and not like it. And
Yeah.
I chose to enjoy it partly because the brutalism of the movie, it's almost like it was directed by Werner Herzog. Like when Kristen gets shot, every time I'm like, oh, when he shoots her, like it's shocking.
Yeah.
Like he's already stabbed a mom and like all this shit has happened and you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like please stop. And like that's part of the power of this thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't mean to like hurry anything up or jump ahead. I don't know how close
you're
in
good.
order you go. I love that we jump around here. We
Yeah.
we try to keep it casual, you know. We joke around, but
Yeah.
the haunted house, that set
whole
piece
sequence
is
is so
so
good.
great. It's way beyond the community rec center or whatever. It's
Yeah,
so
that's
cool
not what they would now be putting together.
No.
If the community rec center had like a bit of a movie budget, that's what that is.
Yeah. But this really cool haunted house and the funny teacher that's in there, like take a left and a left, and he like gives you like the Konami code or whatever.
Yeah.
And Lance Reddick looks so fucking cool in this moment. Like David's playing, you know, the mixtape that Micah Monroe made him.
Yeah.
And Lance Reddick, like in an Enter the Dragon mirror room. That's so cool.
Yep.
And the Dan Stevens, when he pops out and just like cuts all the way up his forearm.
Yeah.
Like in that little flash. And now this big, you know, Luke having to come to terms with like, dude killed our parents. He's not on our side. Are you with me or not?
Yeah.
All of the synth and the fog and how melodramatic and ridiculous all this is, it's all working for me.
Yeah. It doesn't feel, and you know, it's funny. I think in a lesser movie with lesser writing and lesser direction, like all that would feel kind of rushed too. It would be like, oh, like here, this is what you need to understand. Here's like, this is what's happening. Like you either
do you over explain the ending to people? Like, do you ever go, so when it gets to the end, like it's not really like a high school. It's like, do you ever feel yourself,
I have
like,
done that. I've definitely
do you
done
feel
that.
yourself, you feel yourself being like the ending is even like it's a crazy movie, but the ending's like double stamp, triple stamp crazy.
Yeah, it gets bonkers.
Well, and I like, you know, I've admitted it, I'll continue to admit it. Like, I absolutely love it. I love the score of the movie. I love the music supervision. I love the crazy thick fog. And I love when Micah Monroe's like, you killed my parents. And Dan Stevens says, I did.
Yeah.
Yes. And then she shoots him. Like the intentionality of all of it, and Luke and Micah Monroe coming into their power, and Luke being the one to do like the stabbing, I think is
justice.
important. Yeah. And
full circle moment.
as we were just talking about Monster Squad a little bit ago, and you'll be able to hear it on. You should do Monster Squad. You'll love it. You'll be able to hear it on Back to the Blockbuster at some point.
Probably.
But when Dan Stevens goes, "You did good," and gives the thumbs up,
yeah,
I fucking die every time. It's like Van Helsing at the end of Monster Squad when he gives the thumbs up, and you're like, "What? What the fuck?"
Well, it's funny because it's almost like respect. Like you did that. You did that thing.
Right.
You know, like
because
it's kind of funny because it's like this is what he's taught him to do since he's been in his life, right? Hey, stand up for yourself. Like, you know, this is what you need to do. And so he's the one that's kind of taught him to do this. And, you know, he's been dealing with bullies this, like, you know, before he meets David and all that. And now, you know, David's essentially in the bully position, like, you know, killed his parents, is attacking his sister.
Yeah.
So like now he has to be the one to like stand up. And so it is a really nice, you know, not like incredibly thought-provoking, but a cool full circle moment for that character to be the one that does it. Yeah. Like perfect.
I think it's great that ultimately this movie was weirdly about like trying to like add a steeliness to Luke. Like it was like, we're gonna make this guy harder than nails. We're gonna put him through hell. and it's like he's no longer going to be a victim of circumstance or whatever the fuck is going on with him. I
Yeah.
find like that taking that away from it to be like kind of interesting, and I
Yeah.
find it amazing and bold and ballsy and hilarious that David has been shot multiple times, stabbed multiple times, including in the heart, and then he walks out in a fireman's uniform, and Micah Monroe
Fun.
goes, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, yeah, and I love that's like the perfect button too.
The
When
delivery.
when I first saw the movie, man, and like I was like, that is perfect. That was like the perfect way to conclude that. I mean, it goes with like, like you said, there's a bunch of tonal shifts in the movie, but that is the movie right there, in that like
Oh,
one
it's so
little like
good.
moment.
I agree.
It's so well done.
Hey,
I mean,
we're
because like,
friends.
because
Hey, we're friends now. We're friends
yeah, we
now.
are, we
It
are,
just
and I
happens.
think
I'm
like,
sorry. I'm sorry for you. Ask
because
David.
when you watch no, I'm happy with it, man. When you watch it though, like, because I think whenever I watched it with one buddy, he was like, "All right, David's getting shot and stabbed," and he's like looking at me, and he tries to be not the one to like talk during movies. He's like, "So is this guy like, is he human?" Or like, is he
Yeah,
like,
right?
what's going on? Like, what's going on here? I was like, I was like, I think he's human. He's like, well, how is he? He's like, maybe I'm overthinking. He's like, I just won't overthink it. I'll just enjoy it. And
Yeah,
that was like
exactly.
some of the questions he did have. He was like, is there more going on here that he's able
Well,
to survive all these things?
I think there's that, and I'd have to ask somebody involved with the movie directly, which I did not ask them this, but it was a thing, when I had that very brief, lucky opportunity. Like this guy, similar to Terry O'Quinn in The Stepfather, like there's a Stepfather Part 2, and you're like, how did this guy live through what he lived through? And then they
Yeah.
kind of explain it in the sequel, and you're like, okay. And then they make a third one, and the guardrails come all the way off, and it's a real piece
Yeah.
of work that is. But in this movie, it's been said by Simon Barrett and Adam Wingard that in this movie, this is the universe, this is the movie, it's done, it's over. It's really fun that David lives, or that we believe that's David, or what is the real
Yeah.
story. But this is it. May I give you my brief pitch?
Yeah. This is a good time to do
So
it.
David was clinically dead for a moment, a few moments, what have you, and he pops back to life, and this is kind of reset him in terms of the MK Ultra gotta kill everything stuff goes away, a lot
Yeah.
of the insanity stuff goes away, and he just turns into this extremely capable kind of super soldier.
Yeah.
And he kind of becomes Arnold in T2, where he's like, look, Sarah Connor, I'm back. I'm here to protect you.
It's you.
And like KPG sends like other dudes after the kids because they're the ones who still know the government and KPG weren't going to protect him. And so Dan Stevens has been and he's like kind of a movie star now, he did like Abigail and Godzilla X Kong and all
Yeah.
this other stuff. So you got to make him the good guy. So I'm just
Yeah.
saying, you bring it. He's been watching them. He protects them from the KPG bad guys. I think we got something here.
I think you do. I mean, I know that Adam Wingard said that when they were doing Godzilla X Kong, that him and Desi was talked about follow up ideas and sequel ideas. And when
Gee.
when they were talking about it, I was like, would I want a sequel to this? And I was like, yeah, there is a world where I could
Yeah.
have it. I would be okay with it,
I
but it would have to be really. I mean, I actually don't mind your pitch for it. I mean, I get
Oh,
what you're
thank
saying
you.
too with that. I actually, because I get what you're saying about Dan Stevens too, because this year alone he's been all over the place, and he is a
Yeah, he's
full on,
great.
like, he's a full on star now. Actually, the kind of movie star where you're like, oh, he's been in so much, but he's still been able to maintain
Dude,
like a bit of, like, he's a lot of people don't really, like, I have a lot of friends that still don't really know who he is, but when they see him, they're like, oh, that guy. But he's managed to be in
yeah.
a bunch of movies and still have that level of, like,
TV shows, Legion.
yeah, yeah, um,
I think he, and I mean this as an extremely high compliment, he is a character actor talent.
yeah,
And that's so hard to find, period, like great character actors, but also being as good, physically good looking as that dude is, There
Yeah.
are very few guys who have character actor talent that can do what he does that, have like that movie star kind of je ne sais quoi or what have
Yeah.
you. I agree. I heard Simon Barrett, I've read, my understanding is that Simon Barrett is like, this is it. There will be no sequel. I
Yeah.
bought a vinyl of the soundtrack to the sequel that doesn't exist. I listen to it regularly. It's amazing. There is a big part of me that wants it. There's slightly bigger part of me that just wants, as somebody who hosts a podcast, the Review View, every other Wednesday, that I want this to be its own thing. I don't want it to be a franchise. I don't want it to be
Yeah.
sequelized. I want it to just stand alone. There is nothing like this. There are so
Yeah.
many things like it, but there is nothing like it. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I
I can
got you.
sit here and say all these homages or all these little tongue in cheek, all this BS that I've been talking about, but there is nothing exactly like this piece of artwork. Yeah, man, artwork.
No, it is. It really is. And like I said, it takes a special kind of director and writer to make all of those tonal shifts work and blending all those genres together. And they really do. And like I said, you watch it, you discover something new about it every time you watch it. Like I don't know why I didn't pay attention to this, but it's after it's the whole thing with like, oh, her friend's been killed and they arrested the boyfriend for it.
Yeah.
And she's talking to her parents, and then dad's basically like, oh, well, I have very good authority. They're just pot dealers, blah, blah, blah. Just talking mad stuff about the
If Zeke
boyfriend.
Plachette, they say Zeke Plachette killed him, he probably killed him.
And then like she just like, oh, I never broke up with him. I've still been dating him, blah, blah, blah. And then she like, that's when she does the whole like angry daughter thing. She's like, well, what about that guy? She like starts like all the stuff that she's trying to keep a secret about, trying to like, see who he really is. She throws it out on the table. And I did not realize that in the background, when he has to respond to her, like, hey, what about this? That he has like the knife and he is like kind of twirling it on the table.
Oh my God.
And I was like dying laughing because it was like, you're like, oh, because what he's capable of at this point. And you're like, oh man, like I wonder in his head, he's like, all right, I can explain this away, or I might have to just like chop them all up right now. Like that's
have you seen arguably it's between Long Kiss Goodnight and Nightmare 4. Have you seen the movie The Long Kiss Goodnight? With which
Yes.
This movie, I think Adam Wingard and or Simon Barrett have seen that movie.
Yeah.
I love Long Kiss Goodnight. It's great. It's such a beautiful treat for genre fans, especially people who love movies about people that were in MK Ultra or love action type stuff.
Yeah.
In Long Kiss Goodnight, Charlie Baltimore, Gina Davis has a scene where she chops vegetables to a point where you're like, it's scary how good she is at it. And that's the thing that Dan Stevens is doing this movie. He is like chopping vegetables without looking at a speed that is a little bit unnerving, and doing, as you said, things with knives and stuff at times and in company where you're like, what is going on?
Yeah. I love moments like that, man. Like we just covered we did Psycho 2. That was the first Tales of Horror episode we did for this series last week. And there's so many like on the nose, like, he's like Norman Bates is in the kitchen with this girl, and he's like he's out of the institution, like trying to live a normal life, after all the events of Psycho. And he's made like a sandwich for this girl and doesn't take out like just like a butter knife to cut the sandwich in half. It's like this large like butcher knife. I was like, it's just so on the nose. It's so funny. Like,
who directed that too?
This guy Richard Franklin. Richard
Franklin.
And then Tom Holland wrote it.
I think Tom Holland, Fright Night. Tom Holland.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I can't remember which one it is. I feel like I weirdly kind of think the Anthony Perkins directed one is okay. I love genre, man. I love horror.
Yeah.
I especially love 70s through 90s horror. I'm a huge Nightmare on Elm Street freakazoid. And the first three Psychos are, the first one is inarguably, masterpiece. But the second and third ones are sneaky watchable and very fun to me. I hope you enjoyed that. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. So I remember when I first saw the second one, I was like, when it was over, I was like, this has no business being as good as it is. Like
Right.
it, like it has no
Right.
like I avoided it for a really long time because I love Psycho, and I was like, oh, that can't be good. I'm not gonna want to watch that.
That
And one of
was
my
me
friends
with
like, this is
2010.
good. Yeah, one of my friends was like, this is actually good. You need to watch it. And so I was like, yeah. The good thing about Psycho 2, it doesn't try to be Psycho, which is
Nope.
great because it
Not at
can't.
all.
But the
Nope.
ideas and stuff that are going on in that movie are pretty good. And like we talked about how this movie gets bonkers by the end. Like so does that movie. By the end of it, there's like by
Yes.
the last
Yeah.
10 minutes, you're like it throws a lot at you, and you're like, all right.
I like when movies aren't afraid to go. We hope you're having a good time at the movies. We're gonna movie for a good amount of movie now. It's
Yeah,
time to
yeah,
movie, and I can super get behind that.
yeah. I agree. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. I haven't watched. Was it the fourth one? The beginning. I guess that's the fourth one.
I believe so. This is the thing that I'm struggling with, that I don't, I don't want to bust out my Steve Jobs ghost machine. I can't remember which one Anthony Perkins directed, but I remember that one being like, "Oh, this is weirdly good." But I'm also like a person who's like, Nightmare 4 is my favorite. Jason 6 is my favorite. I have this weird love for Halloween 6. I see a Halloween 4 poster in the background. That's
Yep.
my favorite. That has to do with anything with the Cult of Thorn. Like, I'm that kind of,
Yeah.
again, I know I keep hitting this point. If I'm talking to you and we talk for an hour and 20 minutes about anything but this movie, I would have brought this movie up by this point. I'm almost sure of it, especially just
Yeah.
kind of seeing what's in your general environment.
Yep, for sure. I mean, I agree with you on Nightmare 4. I prefer Nightmare 3, but 4 is fun.
Most do.
Like
I,
4 is certainly fun. Like, but by
for,
that point, he's like full on like pop culture. Like this is like he's like MTV famous at that point
right.
when
That
the movie came out.
most
But fun.
commonly referred to as the MTV Freddy,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
agree with that. And it opened the floodgates for a lot of garbage,
yeah,
mostly garbage, where movies were like, well, if Nightmare can do it, I think it's such a special, singular, weird thing. 1 and 3 are much better movies.
yeah,
New Nightmare is a much better movie, but I
yeah.
would watch 4. I'll
Yep.
probably watch it twice in October.
Yeah, it's
I'm a
fun. I mean,
sick
and then plus
individual.
Lisa Wilcox is great too. Like she,
My
everyone talks
favorite, my
about
favorite.
Nancy, and
I
I,
love
and I love
Alice.
and I love Heather Langenkamp. Like she was first,
She's
and like
great.
she's great. But those movies have definitely some good things about them, and I agree with. I used to not like Halloween 6, but now I found a place in my heart for it where like it's
Dude,
enjoyable. It's all
the
right.
director's cut is also amazing, and I don't know what the hell Paul Rudd's doing. God bless him. I love him doing
Yeah.
it.
Oh man, that's great, dude. It's so funny because like we're having this conversation, and I'm like it's the 30th anniversary of New Nightmare in October,
Yeah, great
and
movie.
and like my wheels are turning. I was like, if he has time to do that, like I was gonna, I'm like, I might ask you to be on that because like no one's picked that movie yet. I mean, like I've been hoping that someone picks it, and everyone's been picking other
Bring
stuff.
me.
I'm like, all right.
No,
Now that I
bring me.
fully understand that I'm
As
picking up everything you're putting down now, and I think
as
I know what movies we can talk about and what episodes you should be on.
as somebody who's like, Last Action Hero is one of the greatest movies ever made. You want me on Wes Craven's New Nightmare? For a person who's like meta, yes.
Yeah, that's great that you mentioned that movie too. We deep dived that one like 2 episodes ago. That was fun. I hadn't watched
We
it in a
did
really long time.
too.
Yeah, so like so we're on the same. I think David just I've known David since middle school, so we know each other pretty well.
Wow.
And I think he just like it's great because he'll just like I think you guys should talk. Like he'll just like rant like
Dude.
sometimes he won't even tell me that he did. He's like, yo, I just sent your stuff over. Like,
Awesome.
Okay. Right, thanks,
Dude,
man.
David Park, we owe you a great debt. You're a wonderful man. Thank you. I don't know what else you want to cover in terms of the guest. I'm ready to talk about Wes Craven's New Nightmare for an hour and a half right now. So you're gonna.
I know, dude.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm trying to think of everything. I mean, like you said, the production value of the movie is great too. Cinematography is also there's some shots in it that just look so clean and amazing. Like when you talked about that scene when Craig is shot and it's just like close up on Dan Stevens' face, like just like popping like blue eyes. Like, and that whole shot is
Dude.
just like, yeah. I mean, like everything in the movie looks so clean, and then all the stuff like you said, the rec center, like all that stuff is really cool too. It looks really great.
Well,
It just looks like it
he
costs so
knows
much more
his
money to make.
frame. Yeah,
Yeah,
dude, it looks like it cost 3 or 4 times more than it did. And Dan Stevens
yeah,
is exceptional about knowing his frame and the power of a frame and how much to move.
yeah,
He's oh man, it's just so exact. He's
yeah,
fantastic with it. And as you're saying, that can be really boring and kind of tedious for me in any movie is stuff in cars. And almost every
yeah.
piece of exposition in this movie happens in a car. When you
Right.
need to know what's happening and understand the movie, where you're like, I can't do all the work, do half of the work for me. Half of the work
Yeah,
is done for you. It's all done in cars. So if people are in a car, pay attention. But also, like,
yeah,
I kind of like that there's like it's almost like things are like vibrating, or there's like a motion tracking thing, or I don't know what it
yeah,
is, but something about when they're like, this is what's actually happening, and you're in
yeah.
the car, it all there. I don't know. It doesn't feel like anything interesting like Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead, like mounted on the bumper or anything like that. But it does. It's interesting. It's interesting enough
Yeah,
to like keep my attention. And again, good actors doing really good work, delivering stuff to me that I want to know. That is so
right.
important about movies delivering exposition. Like Major League isn't a fun movie because it's like, here are the rules of baseball. It's like,
Right,
no, why are Tom Berenger and Rene Russo like not together? Why what's the deal? And whenever I
right.
can figure more out about that story, yes. So whenever you're in a car in this movie, audience, pay attention.
I agree. And like usually exposition scenes can be like you get roll your eyes a bit
Uh-huh.
because it's one of those things where like, all right, we have to explain this for the audience, either for the audience that doesn't understand it, that we've been hinting at what is going on, but for those who haven't been paying attention, like here's everything, right? And that scene with Lance Reddick and Ika Moreau where he has to explain to her like what's going on.
Yeah.
Could have easily been like a not great scene, but yeah, you just have two really good actors just kind of he explains things to her, and even though like it's a pretty quick scene and like him having to say like what happened to her parents too, it all is done really well, and it's mostly due to how well they both play off of each other in that scene where he's like, hey, we have to get you out of here, here's what we need to do, but he also has like sympathy for what she is going through and what
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, even though he has like a bit of a hard exterior, he's like, this is a situation that she definitely did not want to be in the middle of, and he also knows that he has to be a bit gentle with how he delivers this news to her, and
Yeah.
also her reaction to it is great too. Like she already knew that something was amiss, and now it's like, that's all the proof right there. That's all she needed to hear.
There's a level of I mean, it's like brevity being the soul of wit and all, where Lance Reddick is there's a difference to, well, if I had been here at 4 o'clock, it would have been different. And if you would have listened to me, I don't know, I'm sorry. And
Yeah,
somebody just going, I'm sorry. And Lance Reddick kind of understanding the brevity in the delivery. It's quick, it's to the point, and there's a tone in it. As dry as he is and as sardonic as she can be, there's a
yeah,
tone, and like the way he lets his eyes linger. That talk about actors that are so powerful with their eyes in this
yeah,
movie. Like, so, oh man, when Dan Stevens hits a certain mode at points, it's like he doesn't blink, or Lance Reddick similarly, or yeah, it's man.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the whole thing about stuff being conveyed so much without even words. Is just like a look and all that. Michael
Yeah.
Monroe has a lot in this movie and also in a lot of other movies that she's been in. Like it follows, like she immediately elicits your sympathy without really saying a lot. Like it's just
Oh,
all on her face. Long Legs, a role that's a little bit more like quiet and reserved, but a lot of it is based on like her, you know, her reacting to things. Like she has so much emotion in the look, and you see it here, and you see it in a lot of other stuff she does too. So yeah,
It's Long Legs, a movie that I like to call Clarice Starling Day One.
pretty
But
much.
she does a very good job, like you said, like, you know, similarly to Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs. There is a power in how steady, how quiet. You know, there's a shy, like, I don't know, Clarice going into Buffalo Bill's place, or Micah Monroe being alone at the house in Longlegs, where there's a, like, Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, more so, where there's a quiet, like, F you, I won't, like, I will charge forward. And she's really, really got that. Man, as we're, you know, veering around in places, it follows as there is a sequel being made. Talk about things that are very singular and very special, and maybe take place in a parallel universe and whatever. I know that movie can be very divisive, as the movie we're talking about this evening is, but I cannot suggest highly enough, if you find yourself, Gaius, you specifically, if you find yourself after this conversation being like, I need it all. I need the cake, the frosting, the sprinkles, the whipped cream, the cherry, the candle, everything. Get the Second Sight 4K I'm mentioning. I think it was like $30 or $40 on Amazon.
I think I'm going to like add it to my cart.
I hope you do, because it's the color balanced, color changed by Adam Wingard 4K, a Blu-ray, a compact disc of the soundtrack of the movie, purposely a CD, a very in-depth guide about the movie, and postcards, as we've all kind of come to expect with nerdy stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the compact disc soundtrack is like, that's the candle.
Yeah, I need to get that. As soon as you mentioned it earlier, I was like, I'm surprised I don't have it, but that will change after tonight.
Okay, good. I'm so glad I could cost you some, not only some time, but some money.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna get that now. I mean, like I said, I love the movie. I'm glad that David sent you my way as someone else that really loves the movie.
Yeah.
And you know, can like talk about it like this. And you know, and also too, I mean, I get why you gatekeep it, because like sometimes I want to gatekeep.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I want to gatekeep certain movies, because you know, everyone's not gonna love things the way that you do. So sometimes you're disappointed when they're like, I guess that was okay, or like, I don't know why you like it so much, or you're just like,
right.
You gotta try not to react like, well, I don't get why you didn't like it, or you know, get a little disappointed when you love something and someone else doesn't. But I've been fairly lucky with this one, with recommending it to people. They've enjoyed it. Some of them enjoy it on the more superficial level. Like I said, they'll like, some of my friends that watch movies aren't looking at it. They're like, oh, this is a reference to this is that. They just enjoy it because it's entertaining, and that
it has a camp value. It has a full-on camp value. I agree with that.
Yeah, and then I remember getting the question a lot too, like, well, what genre is it in? I was like, oh, there's a lot going on, because like I think when I came across it initially, I thought it was supposed to be a horror movie. Like, I think just based on what I heard about it,
it paces that way.
Yeah. And then when I was watching it, I was like, oh no, this is a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So
comedy, suspense, thriller, romance-ish. I feel like we're getting toward wrapping up, and I have to bring everything together.
Yeah.
Before you watched this film, today, on a scale of 1 to 5, would you care to give it some sort of a rating before you rewatched it today?
Before I rewatched it today, I think I had it like a 4.5 out of 5.
Oh, so pretty high.
Yeah, I was pretty high, and then like I said, you enjoy different things about it with each watch,
right?
And I think because like when you have to watch it for something, like, oh, I have to pay attention because I want to talk about all these little things in it,
right?
I think it is for what it is, a perfect movie. Now, I'm not saying it's a 5
genre.
out of 5. Like,
it's genre.
Yeah. It's not 5 out of 5 like The Godfather, guys. So, like, I know some people. I know some people. When Jackson, who's a co-host of the main show, when we rate movies on their anniversaries, we've both gotten, not just on the podcast page, but our individual personal pages, gotten messages like, I can't believe you gave this movie this score, and I'm like, so we try to explain.
It's not a personal attack. It's a movie. Let it go.
It's not. And like Jackson's gotten it worse than me, because like he is just like, the movie fan on the show, and I'm the one that works like quasi in that industry. So like, he isn't trying to enjoy movies on a more, superficial level. But he's like, man, I've gotten like random messages from people who are like, I can't believe you gave this like this and that,
Oh,
that.
dude.
And I was like, that's just part of it. It's fine. And he was like, no, I don't
Okay.
care. It's like whatever. And he's like, yeah, that means people are listening to it. So whatever.
I'm gonna I'm gonna give you a chance to okay. You before you watched it was 4.5. You watched it again.
Yeah.
Did it move at all? Was it in the same spot? Like 4.5?
No, I would perfectly 5 it at this point. Like
now that we've had this discussion, you're at a 5.
It's a well-oiled machine, man. I watch like it's not easy doing what this movie does.
No,
and not at all. And especially like certain films can't handle tonal shifts like this. Like some of them, like in a lesser film, they'd be jarring. You're like, whoa, like well, how do we get here?
Right.
And you got a very capable director and a very good writer, and then also a bunch of actors that understood the assignment and understood the tone of the movie too, because
I agree.
That also takes that too. Like they have to understand what the film is and what they're selling on. They have to be fully, invested in the idea. So I think all that kind of coming together makes this movie perfect for the genre that it is in.
Yeah,
I guess our multiple genres it's trying to represent.
Yeah, I've been, that's the premise of the review podcast is like what was your score before watching, score after watching, score post discussion. And so I'm glad we're both like all the way fluffed. We're both like 5s here all the way, and like you're ready to buy it in a different format and everything. And I love that you said gate. I think that's the main thing. Like it feels, and I said something about personal attacks. It feels when people don't like this, it feels a little bit like, well, what's not to like? Like it's like I don't feel like it's personal, but it touches on so many things where it's like if you just said like I flat do not like this movie. It is not good. I like nothing about it. I'd be like, well, I think you just either didn't watch it or you just don't like movies or you had a bad day. Like there has to be something about this movie that you like, something.
Yep. I remember after my buddy Sean saw it for the first time, he said the thing that surprised him the most, he like really liked it, but he was so surprised by how by the time it was over and he thought about everything, he was like, I was also surprised by how believable a lot of it was. Like it wasn't just like, oh, it was just doing like it wasn't just a movie trying to movie this is only happening. It's only happening because like the script says so, or like because the plot. Like he was like, I actually believed in its in what it was selling. It wasn't like far fetched to me, and that's what he liked about it a lot. So I actually believe that too after watching for this. I was like, it lives in a space where like it can be campy, but also it lives in a space where there is a lot of realism in it, where it feels very believable.
If this thing happened at the level of real world at the end when he snaps, if he's got a couple nicks, bumps, bruises, hits, cuts, whatever, and he decides he's going to go on this sort of rampage, the thing that's scary and sad and so brutal and like hits you so hard is like the ultimate realization is that like somebody could do this. And that I think is like can be the thing that's hard to digest is like, as you say, is like there are parts that are a little bit like wild and there are a lot of parts that are very grounded.
Right.
But and like when I say parts that are wild, it's like a dude lifts 2 kegs. It's like, oh, wild. Like it's not like, and then he like flies out of the roof of the house and turns into a fireball and has to go stop like Mo Dodo or whatever to not stop him from eating the universe or something. Like it's fairly grounded.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you, because I know what I said in the beginning about if this was a situation I was in and a total stranger came to my door saying that they knew my relative and like blah blah, in same circumstances. How I know what position I would take. I already said I would take Anna's position. What position are you taking? I guess if you were in that situation.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, there you go.
And straight up, I'll tell you right now, the more attractive the person is, the less I trust them.
It's like too good to be
true.
That
is the thing I think that is intentional about this movie too, is they wanted somebody who was, very cookie cutter. I shouldn't say cookie cutter, but like movie star looking. Like
yeah,
somebody that you describe as a canned response of what's a movie star.
yeah,
It's kind of this dude.
yeah,
And it's very clear in that very beginning that the mom is like, "Oh, hi," before she's like, "Oh, hi." Like, and that
yeah.
transition happens kind of quick. But no, I'm with you, man. Like, absolutely not. Get the shut the front door. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Yeah.
Not
Also,
buying it.
like, can we all discuss this before you just do it? Because like
Yeah.
she makes a decision on her own. It's just like, we
I,
should
I, ha- I have no kids, let alone a passed away one. So,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I do like on her end it is played realistic too. Like he
yeah,
drops the information on her, and I love that they have that other scene where she needs to get away and like cry it out.
yeah,
Like that was a very honest reaction to
yep,
that to you.
yep.
So I do get why she does it. I'm just
Not
more,
much is wasted in this movie, as you said.
yeah,
It's like things come around, like come back
yeah,
around, like pretty regularly. It's
yeah,
tight. It's tight.
it is. I get, totally get why she does it. I'm just more naturally suspicious. So I just
Same.
I don't know. That doesn't seem right. And again, like you said, I don't trust. I agree with you. The more good looking, like not too good to be true. There's
Yeah,
something.
it's like if Brad Pitt shows up at my house, it's like if you've seen Arrested Development, I'm like Jessica, and I'm like shutting the door, like
Yeah,
I don't think
it's
so.
not gonna work.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Well, Paul, thank you for coming on and
Thank you.
discussing
A
the
pleasure.
guests with me. This was fun. Every time we have guests on, and I like when I'm in the moment, like doing the show and like recording the episode, I'm like in the middle. I'm like, this conversation is going, and I'm always like thinking about like, hey, the next one that could happen. So like
I
that's
love
what
that.
I
That's great.
so,
Come on ours,
so,
please.
yeah, for
Come
sure.
over to ours.
I would love to. And like, no, this was a lot of fun. And like I said, we have a lot of Tales of Horror stuff coming up. I will actually, I know I mentioned Wes Craven's Little Nightmare, but will email you the list that we have. And if you see anything that
Oh, beautiful.
interests
Thank
you, like,
you. I love that.
just,
I'd love to do a Freddy. I love Freddy, man. I'd love to do it.
And 'tis the season for all those movies.
Yeah, and October 2nd, you can hear the guest on the review. I don't know when this one drops for you, but like trust me, audience, you will want to listen to both.
Yeah. I was lucky enough that he sent me the episode to listen to, and between the two, I think you'll have a lot of information about about the movie, and then also like just hearing like different takes on it, different reactions to it, things that different people noticed. Yeah, it is a movie that I'm glad that as years have gone on, more people have discovered it. It still feels like it's a little like
unknown,
a bit. Definitely has like a cult following, but I'm not sure how big the cult is.
Yeah, I agree. Like when you look at the overall box office numbers and like how this hasn't made it to 4K US release, US distributed at this point tells you I think pretty much everything you need to know. And I think we went over pretty much everything you need to know about this movie here. But if you're like, I really like this. This is good, but I think it could use more like dick and fart jokes and like random dumb shit stuff. Then you could listen to the other one that I'm on. Why not?
Best of both worlds. That's what you're getting.
Yeah.
Well, that has been another episode of Back to the Blockbuster presents Deep Dives with our special guest Paul from the Review podcast. You're probably going to hear him on this show more. So look forward to that.
It would be a pleasure. Thank you so much.
No problem. And as always, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods. They are all great. But Playlist is our podcast network, and they have a studio app. So please, if you would like, download it from the iOS store or the Google Play Store. You can listen to us and all their other great shows. We have more deep dives coming in the future as well. More Tales of Horror and our new show. There's a lot happening at Back to the Blockbuster. So yeah,
I love
it. We're very, very busy. But this helps out a lot. And I know everyone's been asking about Jackson, who's our co-host. I recorded 2 episodes with him over the weekend. He's been really busy with classes, something already we knew that was going to happen months in advance. He had just a few more weeks to that, and then we'll be back on full-time completely. He misses it. Excellent. He misses all you guys. Looking forward to that. But we were able to record episodes in advance where it feels like he's not quite gone. So like the way we scheduled it out, it's worked out. And friends of the show have been helping by jumping on and sitting in his spot while he's gone too. So that's been great as
Good.
well. And we are going to be recording our 200th episode very soon as well. He's going to make time for that. So a lot to look forward to. We are both stoked about everything that's going on at Back to the Blockbuster. And again, that the longer we go, the more opportunities we have like this to meet other great people doing their own shows. And
thank you so much.
You know, meeting like-minded people. This has been the best thing about doing all this.
I agree.
And I didn't realize how like-minded until we got deeper into this episode. So I was like,
yeah. Then you know.
Then you know. So as always, guys, thank you for listening. Paul, once again, thank you for being on.
A pleasure.
See you next time. Peace out, guys.